What's up, everybody? How we doing? Matt Modi here with OddsJam, here to give you some DFS player props for this NFL championship weekend. So looking at prize picks, looking at underdog, coming up with my favorite DFS, plays to lock in early in the betting slate. Finding plays early is a really good way to take advantage of books that have mispriced lines, sports books that haven't quite updated their lines to match and be reflective of what the market should truly be priced at. In this case, we're looking at prize picks, we're looking at underdog, trying to find value on those sports books, on those DFS websites compared to the markets. And the first example of a play that I really liked is looking in the Eagles game against San Francisco and Jalen Hurts to throw for over 234.5 passing yards. So this is play number one of my DFS entry. The reason why I like this one, look at where the rest of the markets price it. So 234.5 is the prize picks number. PointsBet has it 1 yard higher at 235.5. But then we see odds up to 237.5, 239.5. And then when you're looking at player props, you specifically want to look at a couple sharp sports books. Number one, the OddsJam line prices it 7 yards higher at 241.5. DraftKings, another good one, specifically with player props, also 7 yards higher at 241.5. Even the other DFS company, which is Underdog, has this at 240.5, 6 yards higher. So pretty good price here, getting Jalen Hurts to throw for over 234.5 passing yards. So that is going to be the first leg of my entry. Another one that I really like, which I admit is a little bit risky, is Mahomes going over 264.5 passing yards. So the reason why you see less books with the Mahomes prop is just because there's a little bit of unknown regarding his injury, right? He left the game early with a sprained ankle, came back in the second half, played okay, was clearly hobbled, was limping up and down the field, still played. He's still Mahomes, he's still Mahomes, but we're getting another good price on him to go over 264.5 passing yards. And this is, again, at prize picks. The other 5 sports books that price it, the closest one is at 270. It looks like we just got another one. The other ones, every other book, the next looks like there's 5 of them that are literally updating lines as we speak, which is why the OddsJam screen is so cool. But literally every other book has it at 273.5. That is 9 yards higher than what Prize Picks is offering. That is a really, really good price. And yes, there is some unknown with his injury, but all of these sports books are taking into account the fact that he might be injured. And we're getting a really good price on Mahomes to go over 264.5 passing yards. So this is going to be the second leg of the Prize Picks one. Unfortunately, no real value on Underdog. I don't hate Brock Purdy under 218.5 passing yards. PointsBet does price it higher at 220. So just for a straight up bet, Prize Picks getting Purdy to go under 220.5 is pretty good. But look at the other sports books, right? 215, 216. DK keeps locking it and unlocking it, 216 across the board. So only 2 to 3 yards lower than the consensus line, the consensus line is 2 to 3 yards lower than the prize or the underdog line. So it's not horrible. So if you did want to add one to a underdog entry, the Brock Purdy under 218.5 passing yards isn't horrible. But this is just one market, right? There's receiving yards, there's rushing yards, there are receptions. There's a ton of other things that we can look at to find good props to add. So let's just go through it. So right now we found 3 plays total, 2 prize picks, 1 underdog. For player passing yards, let's look at player receiving yards, which is right here. Same logic. We're going to look at prize picks. We're going to compare prize picks to the rest of the sports books. So we do already have a prize picks entry, which is Jalen Hurts passing. This is not a bad price on AJ Brown to go under his receiving yardage total on prize picks. Has it at 72.5. Pretty much across the board, we see 70 down to 69. So obviously, passing yardage being in the 200s, the gap going from 72 to 69 is a lot more meaningful going from 238 to 241, right? Because these numbers are smaller. So the yardage becomes more significant. So not bad. A.J. Brown under 72.5 receiving yards on Prize Picks. Underdog has it at 71.5, so it's not quite as good. But again, you're still getting a price above every other sportsbook. Every other sportsbook has it priced below. So I don't hate this one getting A.J. Brown under 71.5 receiving yards as well on Underdog. So that's my second Underdog. 2 to 3 Prize Picks, right? I know you can't do players on the same team, but if you want to do a second Prize Picks entry, A.J. Brown is another good one. So for a second or third underdog one, George Kittle under 46.5 receiving yards. It's pretty good. Again, every other book prices it below this number. Not a single other book prices it at 46.5. Now, I know Kittle had that incredible catch against the Cowboys, and he was really their only real receiving threat that did anything. But as good as Kittle's been to end the year, his yardage hasn't really quite been there aside from this last game against the Cowboys. So we're getting a good price here on him to go under 46.5 receiving yards. This is obviously at Underdog. Prize Picks has it at 45. I'm not touching the Prize Picks one. It's better value getting it at 46.5. So in terms of the Kansas City Chiefs versus Bengals game, Hayden Hurst going over his receiving yardage prop on both Prize Picks and Underdog is pretty good. Underdog has it at 31.5. Prize Picks has it at 32.5. Both overs are pretty good. Again, if you compare the rest of the sports books and with how low these numbers are, right? Getting 31 to 34 is a really big deal. 31 to 35. It's a pretty big deal. So Hayden Hurst to go over his receiving yardage prop is pretty good. Over 31.5, over 32.5. I do like these a lot. Both of them individually, I like a lot as two receiving props. So that's it for the receiving one. Last up, let's look at player rushing yards. You can also type in here as well. That's also way easier if you just type looking at player rushing yards. So the logic is the same here. Look for an example of where we can get some sort of mispriced line. And I do see one right off the bat. I mean, both Miles Sanders and Jalen Hurts going over their rushing total is pretty good, specifically on Prize Picks, right? Prize Picks has Jalen Hurts at 45.5. Underdog has it at 46, so not a bad underdog play as well. Look at every other book. Every single one, 48.5 across the board, 48.5 except for PointsBet. So another good over to take on PointsBet as well. So Hurts over his rushing yardage prop on both Prize Picks and Underdog is pretty good. Same with Miles Sanders, right? Not as good as the Hurts one, but his over-under is at 52.5 on Prize Picks, 53.5 on Underdog. If you look across the board, FanDuel and FoxBet looks like they have it at 53.5. Universally across the board at 55.5. So again, pretty good price here on these. And then for Prize Picks, honestly, one of the best values that we've found is Isaiah Pacheco to go under 57.5 rushing yards. This is probably the best play out of all of them. Now, I know you have to parlay them together, so I'm just kind of giving you a bunch of different plays, and then you guys can kind of match them and parlay as you please. But Isaiah Pacheco under 57.5 rushing yards is really, really good. The closest book, 7 yards lower at 50.5, and then look at the pinnacle line, 46.5. This is probably the best value, like I've said, and this is kind of the exact thing you're looking for. Just a huge, huge discrepancy on Prize Picks compared to every other book. So that's going to be it. None of the other rushing props seemed that good. So that's going to be it for this video. If you guys are tailing these Underdog and Prize Picks, fantasy picks, comment and let me know. But that's all I got for you guys. So appreciate everybody watching and have a good one.